All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and are persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's Statement of Compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Welcome to the series on the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is pre-recorded and is called The Red Pill. Thanks to DCTV, to Carmen Stanley, Program Director, Maurice Jackson, Studio Producer and Director, and Cruchet Starnes, Audio and Teleprompter. We said that the United States military is with us, our gold, and the United States Constitution of 1789. We, humanity, are in charge of the world's wealth and not the insolvent, that means bankrupt, banking cartel. I'm here to work together with everyone using the world's wealth to clean up our money system so that we can tackle the misinformation together. The corruption is very deep. The banking cartel uses its near-total control of global media, education, and entertainment to maintain its invisibility with a high wall of false reality. The wall of false reality is sometimes called a matrix. When someone helps people see through the wall of false reality or matrix, they are said to be giving these people a red pill. This series on DCTV is a red pill. Once people know that we're under a big illusion in the matrix, there's no going back. Let's talk about what's going on with the United States military. The social media is a very powerful tool. I've been talking to the state of Texas about the fact that the United States is not surrendering unilaterally when there's a coalition that's much, much stronger than the network of global corporate control. This coalition was predicted by a very powerful stakeholder analysis coming from the United States Department of Defense. I discussed this model with then Senator Chuck Hagel in 2008. When Major John Spencer, who teaches at the United States Military Academy, wrote an editorial in the New York Times saying that soldiers should spend less time on social media, I tweeted this response, mentioning that the power transition model was developed by Ronald Taman, chair of the Department of National Strategy at the National War College. The power transition model shows that the United States, minus the Federal Reserve note, will retain its allies, including Germany and Japan. The model shows treason by Martin Dempsey, former chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, John Reimer, Inspector General of the Department of Defense, and just about all of the brass on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, starting with Joseph Dunford. I've bankrupted many of these traitors with commercial liens. I've also called these traitors out in public. United States military remain loyal to the rest of the country during this interregnum. Major Spencer, this is in response to your op-ed in the New York Times, bemoaning soldiers' access to social media. The real problem you're facing is that social media has ended the censorship by the now bankrupt network of global corporate control identified by Vitaly Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich. Most Americans, and that includes soldiers, know that the New York Times is simply bankers' propaganda and nothing more. The United States International Monetary Gold Reserves, set aside in the global debt facility at the end of World War II, are preventing the United States military from having to surrender unilaterally, despite Martin Dempsey's treason. The global debt facility, administered by the 189 ministers of finance on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, is now foreclosing under the commercial lien which it has placed on Martin Dempsey's assets. Thankfully, social media is helping the United States military to remain loyal to the rest of the country during this interregnum, predicted by the model developed by Ronald Taman, chair of the Department of National Strategy at the National War College. Power Transitions Strategies for the 21st Century. See also, and you can see that in the teleprompter, even while the New York Times remains mute, social media continues to inform the public how the United States is implementing what John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan set out to do before they were shot. And now let's talk about the red pill. The morning that this video was taped, I tweeted, "I've been telling you that our relationship is responsible for the defeat of the banking cartel. As we learn how to work together, this makes it very difficult for the banking cartel." What is it about our relationship that puts an end to the banking cartel? It's the world's wealth in the global debt facility, which was deposited at the end of World War II into the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. I found out about the wealth in the global debt facility in 2013, and since then, I've done my job to preserve this wealth for the benefit of humanity. We're now going to watch a segment taped on July 28, 2015, about the global currency reset. Since July 2013, the price of gold for immediate delivery has been higher than the price of gold for future delivery. That means gold backwardation, that means paper currencies are very, very weak, and the United States currency is not the Federal Reserve note. The United States currency is the gold that is on deposit in the World Bank and IMF, and which is administered by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and the IMF, not administered by the network of global corporate control. That network doesn't own the gold. The Fed does not own the gold. The U.S. Treasury Department does not own the gold. We had a notarial protest in February of 2015, where it was very clear that the gold is in the global debt facility, which I am the lawyer for. I have the signature authority, and I have the approval of the Board of Governors, which knows that I'm simply there to give the countries and people of the world voice. Sometimes I present a cartoon, which I'll give to the staff at DCTV, who have been backstopping me on all of this. It shows a telephone switchboard operator, and that's actually the function that I have. I'm simply trying to get the information from the very heart of the international financial system to the people, and the information from the people to the center. And you can see from the picture showing how the people in Japan are not simply accepting what's going on. They're depending on the United States military to defend them. They're the ones that are right in the middle of the catastrophe in Fukushima. That's one of the things that the wealth in the global debt facility is going to be used for. And the other thing is to put gold inside the currencies of all the nations. We're not talking about a one world order whatsoever. because the role of the Bretton Woods institutions is not going to be to intrude in the decisions that the people are going to be making in their individual countries. And one of the most important aspects of the global currency reset is local currencies. These are going to be issued in the villages and towns. That creates full employment, and we've started sharing some of the information that different communities, their different approaches. We're going to have a lot of sharing of information, and the most important thing that individuals can do who want to be part of the global currency reset is for them to form discussion groups in their neighborhoods and their villages. Doesn't have to be a lot of people. As a matter of fact, it shouldn't be, because you want to be working together for the duration and sifting through the various information and making your decisions. You're going to have a lot of decisions to make, and it's going to be you who's going to be making those decisions, not at the center. It's not going to be like the network of global corporate control, where you have one person in the central control booth feeding orders to up and down the line. No, it's going to be a bottom-up approach, and all that the people at the Bretton Woods institutions are going to be doing is they're going to be making sure that the gold does not get stolen, that there's proper accounting, and we're going to have our hands full with that. Just those simple things, because as I'm going to be mentioning, or I just mentioned actually today, we're briefing this, taping this on July 28th. The banking cartel has been trying to interfere with the global currency reset, and now that we've defeated them, they're trying to crash the world's economic system. They're hoping that the people who believe their lies are going to panic. I'm now showing you the cover that the banking cartel has published in The Economist, in the hopes that the critical mass of people who know what the actual reality is will not win the day. As I told you in the beginning of this segment, the United States military, not the traitors at the top, but the rank and file, that is over 70% of the U.S. military, are not fooled by the banking cartel. They know that the United States stands strong with our monetary gold reserves, and they're backing the coalition for the rule of law that's going to see to it that we have a peaceful global currency reset. The teleprompters have a wide distribution, and I've put there a reprint of my November 2nd, 2018 tweet showing how the coalition is putting an end to the banking cartel and its lies about reality. I've also reprinted the DCTV teleprompter from November 10, 2015, and current information about Yemen. I'm going to use the remaining time to speak extemporaneously. Well, first of all, let's start out with Yemen. What's going on in Yemen is they're starving the people, and this is really reprehensible. I used to be the country lawyer for Yemen. I know their people very well, and one of the things that many people may not realize is that in the 800s, more than the majority of the population were actually people who had left Israel to populate Yemen, and you could see these people, their silversmiths and the wonderful jewelry that was from descendants of that group. And then when Israel started, the Yemenis, the Jewish Yemenis, went back to Israel, and what happened was over 4,000 of their children were taken away from them, and many of those children were shipped to the United States in return for the military information about the bomb. And I put that in a segment to tell you about that. But what's going on now, North and South Yemen never really got along, and some of the people in South Yemen are now trying to create another country. Now, during the global currency reset, it's going to be very destabilizing if we start redrawing boundaries. Many of the boundaries of the existing nations were artificially set, but it's going to be too much to handle to try to redraw those boundaries. So I'm suggesting that what we want to do is to keep the boundaries for the time being until we get rid of all the corruption. And of course, the local communities are going to be working in the local communities to set up their own currency. And then it's not going to be so difficult for people to decide what they want to do. And as I mentioned in the clip that you saw, the World Bank is not going to meddle in the countries. Right now, we're going to accept the boundaries as they've been drawn, and we're going to get rid of the corruption in the countries. And the people in those countries are going to decide how they want to govern themselves. And if they decide that they want to break apart, then they can certainly decide that. But this is not going to be happening from the outside, and there's not going to be any meddling. We really have got to be comfortable with the fact that the existing military powers are there to make sure that we decide these things in peace. And it's very clear that's where we are right now. One of the criticisms that you can read in the comment section in YouTube, because I put these CDs of the segments up on YouTube, and you can read what the comments are. Many people comment that it's taking us too long, and the fact that it's taking us so long means that clearly there's a problem. Well, you can actually turn that around, and you can say that the fact that the banking cartel has not succeeded in shutting us down shows that we are making progress. It's just that we have to coalesce, we have to get ourselves organized, and that's what we're actually doing. What happened in the very beginning of this series is you saw that there were a number of agents that were raising issues, and I was having a dialogue with them. Bengt Carlson was one of these people. And finally, when I realized, based on some of the things that Bengt was saying about the military, I realized he was just a mouthpiece for the banking cartel. That's called controlled opposition, when somebody wants you to believe that they're actually on your side, but it turns out that they're not. And that was what the situation was with Bengt. And finally, I made it clear to the agents and the controlled opposition that the dialogue was actually going to be with humanity and not with agents or controlled opposition. And so you'll also see in the comment section of YouTube that there are many what we call sock puppets. These are people who are pretending that they're real people, and they're really not. They're raising questions that the banking cartel wants to raise. And I call these people out, and they usually have no comment because they are sock puppets. It turned out Colleen Ferris, I accused of being a sock puppet, and she really wasn't. She was somebody living in Hawaii. And when I found out that she was a real person, I apologized. And Colleen Ferris made a couple of comments in the last segment that I really didn't understand. It may very well be that Colleen she's gotten intimidated, because that's what happens to individuals. The banking cartel has a way of threatening them, and then they become they don't really speak for themselves. They lose their way. And of course, you can't criticize somebody for being intimidated. But and also there are people who think that I couldn't maintain my integrity in the face of the banking cartel. But you see through the years, yes, I do. That's just the way I am. At some point, if I'm not, what's the word? I'm just a person like anybody else. But I'm not going to change my my opinion. Either I'm going to be here and speaking straight to you, or I'm going to be dead, one or the other. And that's it. I'm vulnerable. I've discovered this any number of times. I've had broken bones, etc. But you'll know, as I've told you, one of my functions is I'm the canary in the coal mine. And if I'm not there, then you'll know that we don't have a global currency reset. And if I'm there, you'll know we do have a global currency reset. I've got a track record. And any of the crooks that tried to steal the world's wealth, they didn't get it, did they? No, they didn't get it. Instead, I kept some records, and you can see the various efforts that these crooks took, and you can see that none of them got anywhere. So all that they managed to do was to reveal the banking cartel and the black nobility, and that's the same thing that happens with the sock puppets. Their questions, we managed to expose them, and it just backfires. The fact that the banking cartel is taking the trouble to try to convince people through sock puppets, that just reveals the existence of the banking cartel. And they're not very convincing either, are they? No, I don't think they're very convincing. But that's obviously for people to decide, because we are either going to decide that humanity has this wealth and it belongs to humanity and we have a global currency reset, or we're going to have World War III, one or the other. So that's where things are. I wanted to talk a little bit about Syria, because Syria is now in the press since Donald Trump, who's an agent of the banking cartel, and he's not the real president, and he's certainly not the commander-in-chief of the United States. Trump has decided to put sanctions back on Syria. What we've shown you is that Syria is actually, it's got two competing pipelines for natural gas. And that's the reason that there's an attempt to start World War III in Syria. But so far that hasn't happened. And I don't think it will happen. I think the likelihood that the coalition of people that understand that humanity has a great deal of wealth, I believe that that coalition is going to carry the day. And the chances that we carry the day, that we defeat the banking cartel, is greater than 90%, and probably closer to 95%, because of the passage of time and the fact that we're still in the game, and they're just simply getting more and more exposed, and more people are realizing that there's something wrong with reality. And the fact that people are trying to censor me. Why would they have to censor me unless I was telling the truth? Think about that. So let me also talk about Russia. And Russia's very, very important, not only because of the Cold War, and also because there was an attempt in 2015 to have a first nuclear strike against the Russians. But I think probably the bigger threat that Russia has is the fact that their Moscow State University has the WWII project, which shows that history is not the way the banking cartel portrays it. History, what happened in the 1600s and before, is very different than the history that's taught in the books. History was rewritten by the Jesuits, and that's what the people at Moscow State University have documented in great, great detail. I've bought some of their volumes, and it's very impressive what they've done. You really ought to look at that yourself. So Russia is it's standing up for all of humanity. The fact that 25 million people were killed in World War II shows you where they stand. And it was also a Russian historian, I've forgotten his name, but I mentioned it a couple of times ago, who told us that at the very first meeting of the World Bank, that there was a decision taken to end the banking cartel, to abolish the Bank for International Settlements. And then they erased this, but the records are there. And one of the things that I'm going to be trying to do in the near future is to go back and to take my place at in the World Bank, in their bureaucracy. The banking cartel has been underestimating us all along. We remain on track to take back our world, together with the wealth of the world in the global debt facility, and together with a coalition for the rule of law that contains the world's military powers. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.